The Springboard definition of allusion is this: a reference to a well-known person, place, event, literary work, or work of art, okay? So a reference, so the author references, they throw it out there for you, to a person, place, event. What were the other ones?
Work of art.
Literary work or work of art. So they're typically, allusions are going to be things that your reader is familiar with. It's going to clarify the text for them in some way, shape, or form, okay? So that's why we're dealing with this first learning target. Let's talk about it a little bit. I can analyze the impact of a specific word choice on meaning and or tone using allusions to other text, okay? So we're specifically dealing with allusions. And allusions to other texts. We do actually have some allusions to other speeches in this, and we're going to talk about this in a minute. So the impact, we need to think about, one thing that we need to think about as we go on talking about allusions is the impact that they have on the reader, because they clarify things for the reader. They make them clearer, okay? And a lot of times they add more of a personal or a connection to something else, okay? So they allow the reader to connect. So if you think about this, when we read, sometimes we make text to text or text to self or text to real world connections, okay? So when we have allusions in a text, we're making essentially a text to text connection. We're saying, especially if it's referring to another literary work, then we make a text to text connection. Or if it refers to, like there's an allusion in here that refers to another famous speech, we're making almost a text to real world connection as well, because it's something that we've probably learned about in history class, okay? So let's talk about some of the things that you marked. Somebody tell me, let's start with this first one. What were some of the images in this that caught your attention? Somebody tell me one of the images that caught your attention. Kennedy, tell me one of the images.
I said that it is obvious today that America has defaulted on this promissory note insofar as her citizens of color are concerned today. Instead of honoring this scarce obligation, America has given the black people a bad check, a check which has some backmarked insufficient funds. But we refuse to believe that the Bank of Justice is bankrupt. We refuse to believe that there is insufficient funds in the great vaults of opportunity of this nation.
Okay, so explain to us what the image was that you were seeing in your mind as you read this.
Well, I was kind of seeing like a bank and like a big vault and a check and everything that it basically like told me about, and I just imagined what it would be like to be back then. And
you're exactly right, and this is all a big metaphor, but it's also a big image, because when we read it, we can see this bank, and I see this huge check with this like voided, not sufficient stamp on it, okay? Very good. What are some other images you marked, Amber?
It came as a joyous daybreak to end the long night of their captivity.
Okay, and where was that?
Right here.
So in the very beginning, when it says, it came as a joyous daybreak to end the long night of their captivity. And what do you see in your mind as you read that?
That it was a long night for the African Americans to deal with how they were being treated, and now they finally get to see the sun, and they finally get to be free.
So you kind of visualize this just completely pitched black night all of a sudden in this beautiful sunrise. That's exactly right. All right, Olivia, what did you find?
100 years later, the life of the Negro is still sadly crippled by the manacles of segregation and the chains of discrimination.
Okay, and what was your image that particularly stood out in your mind?
I'm pretty sure that manacles are handcuffs and like chains and everything, and I just think of chains.
Very, very good. Very good. Perfect. So manacles and then a chain. So we think of handcuffs and chains. We can visually see those things. Bailey.
I said this note was a promise that all men, yes, black men as well as white men, would be guaranteed the unalienable rights of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, which made me think that all races would be like, I saw it like a voting booth, and they'd all be equal, like sitting and voting and stuff.
Yeah, so you saw that image in your mind. Very good. Timmy, let's finish up with you. Share with us one last one.
Let freedom ring from the snow-capped Rockies of
Colorado. Okay, so what do you see in your mind when you read that?
Snow-capped Rockies.
So you see these mountains with big old chunks of snow on top of them. Very good. All right, so now let's talk about some of those unclear, unfamiliar words to you. Jimmy and Dakota, will you point out the word that you were talking to me about that was unclear for you?
Insufficient.
Insufficient, okay? So let's talk about that for a second. So this is one of those words that we can break down and figure out what the prefix means in order to figure out what the entire word means, okay? So does anybody